So, hi everyone. I'm Nina Collins at The Wolfer, and we're live today talking to two doctors I love. Dr. Jamie Schehr is the blonde. She's a nutritionist and functional medicine doctor in New York City. And Dr. Debbie Magids is a psychologist in New York with a thriving practice who I was with personally for years, and now we're friends also. So we're here today to talk about kind of the psychology of overindulging. I think we've reached a point in this quarantine, 9-10 weeks in for a lot of us, where like the fun of, oh, I'll just drink every night and go on Zoom and, I'll indulge myself and let myself just do whatever I have to do to get through this is starting to wear thin. We're all starting to be like, oh God, do I really want to come out of this feeling uneducated, uneducated, under-exercised and too flabby. And on the other hand, I feel very torn about this. As I said to Debbie, I do not want to shame anyone for overindulging. So we want to talk about just kind of the psychology of why we do it and how. And before I let you two dive in, I want to ask you guys both what your kind of go-to overindulgences have been. Because mine are tuna casserole, vodka, and gluten-free pretzels. I've been eating tons of those things.
Go ahead, Jamie. I don't know if Jamie has one.
She probably doesn't.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I've been making a lot of chocolate chip cookies with my girls because we turned one of our homeschooling subjects into home ec. So I feel like chocolate covered raisins and chocolate chip cookies are my jam, at least right now in this quarantine. I don't know. I think it would be ice cream from like an ice cream shop if I were out in the world.
Okay.
Chocolate but Jamie, may I ask, are you actually overindulging though?
Yeah.
I've never seen her overindulge in my life.
Yeah. Well, I take the question as like indulge. I don't know if like, I probably
you have like one cookie a day.
She can, or like this much ice cream. She's really disciplined in that way. Yeah.
She's embarrassed. We've embarrassed her.
No,
I indulge. Maybe I'll like take the over out, but definitely to be very clear, I am not that person who eats all clean food and all healthy food. Like I eat a cookie, I eat ice cream. Like I very varied intake. So maybe just not a ton of it, but I absolutely.
Yeah. But I've been with Jane a long time. She there's no food group she doesn't eat, but she's very portion controlled. She's not, a little ice cream is enough for her. She doesn't have to eat the whole pint. I, on the other hand, overindulge in sweets. Mostly ice cream, but it's in a weird way because I dig through the whole thing. I like to pick out little chips. There's something very
OCD.
No, it's not OCD at all. It's comfort and it's from childhood. It's not OCD at all. I like to take a big thing of ice cream and throw most of it away, but pick through to the chips, and I'll eat bags of Skinny Pop. Those are my overindulgence.
Interesting. Wait, we could talk for probably at least half an hour on the ice cream thing alone. I'm fascinated. I know we have to go on, but what's comforting about that?
There's something in the digging around and finding the chips that just soothes me. And personally, sugar is a comfort to me, and it's twofold, but I will tell you, it's very attached to a nice thing because my father was very nurturing. He's no longer with us. We were sugar junkies in our house, and my father used to make chocolate eggs with us on white toast. It's like eggs with Nestle Quick, chocolate Nestle Quick, and put it on hot white toast. And Sunday mornings we'd have French toast with like a mound of white sugar. And we were and he loved sugar and he brought us up on sugar. So it's sugar is what I go to from childhood. So it's a way that comforts me and soothes me.
That's very sweet. I've actually never heard of chocolate eggs. Scrambled eggs in general are definitely a comfort food for me. It's interesting.
They're raw though. It's like raw egg yolks with Nestle Quick. And then it's all smooth and you put it on hot toast. Don't ew it. And then also bagels dipped in chocolatey chocolate milk. So this is what we did young. And here I am, gained 5 pounds during quarantine. So let's continue off of me on to the guests. Yes.
So why don't you guys start? Tell us what you want to talk about and why we're here.
You want to start, Jane?
Yeah. So for me, I'm getting a lot of people who are just at the point now, which is very different from when it started. When it started, it was like Zoom and drinks and like quarantine, just baked banana bread and all of those like funny memes that we're seeing that are rooted off of real action. But now everyone's like, oh, all right, this is kind of what we're working with for a while.
Yeah.
So I need a little bit of guidance in, the kitchen is always there, and food is accessible all the time, and you're sort of in some capacity in control of your schedule, your lunch, or this or that, because you're home. So a lot of people are like, they're bored of the same foods they've been eating for the past few months. They're either overindulging or under eating certain foods that maybe they should be eating, and just sort of really trying to figure out like what's happening right now. There's a lot of emotion behind it, right? There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of worry. And this isn't even about sort of weight loss, weight gain, but there's a lot of worry about like, what is this type of eating going to do? Like, I don't feel good, or how am I going to change it? And so a lot of people are just reaching out to me with this dual sort of question about what and how should I eat? And why am I sort of all of a sudden gravitating towards these things? So combining this with Debbie is really interesting, because when we put that together, like the nurture of food connected to looking for nurture in our lives, there's such an awareness where people are like, I'm not hungry, I'm bored, I'm not craving sweets, I'm sad. And so it's just really, it's been really interesting to see it come together this way.
Yeah, I definitely feel like, I mean, most of my eating, I feel like, is bored eating, honestly. Like, it's just entertainment. At the end of the day, I'm like, oh, now I can have some vodka and my pretzels. And
well,
my boyfriend,
hey, Nina, that's not eating, that's drinking.
It's drinking, but it's like it's an experience. My boyfriend made a joke early on Facebook that he needed to be socially distanced from his kitchen. So yes, your point that the kitchen is always there and we're just here in the house with our food.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in. I mean, there's so many ways to go by this. Like, there's so many reasons from an emotional perspective why people are eating, right? There's boredom. And then there's loneliness. I think part of my gaining weight at the beginning was loneliness. I'm quarantined alone. All of a sudden, I'm in 24/7 by myself. No one's leaving the house. For some people, it's deprivation. They feel like they're being deprived of so much right now that the thought of depriving themselves of anything that they want to eat feels too much to them right now. And so it really is a potpourri of different things. And, where we started with my patterning from childhood, Jamie talks a lot about this too, with her clients and with me. It's, you have to go back to like, what are you feeling now? And we'll talk to feelings in a moment more, but what's the pattern? What have you been doing your whole life? It's not just in quarantine, right? Like, I've my whole life gone to sugar for comfort. And I have traced it back to like, because I was very much comforted by this man, and it's associated for me. And I've been trying to lick this, and listen, I'm the queen of self-awareness, and I've licked a lot of things. I've not licked the sugar connection. Right?
I was about to say, so how do you break that? If sugar and the memories of your father bring you comfort?
Yes, it's been very difficult to break it, especially since he's no longer with us. But I have times where I'm better at it, right? Like anything else, like Nina, Jamie knows, self-awareness goes a long way, but you can very easily regress back to old behavior. So something like a pandemic happens, I'm triggered too, to go right back to old behavior, where a month before that, for the last 8 months, I was been really good about sugar. So I too regressed, and I had to rein it in. So
your point about feeling deprived is a really good one. I hadn't thought about it that way, that like we feel like I feel like our days have gotten so simple, right? It's like we wake up, we clean, we exercise, we cook. There aren't a lot of things that are stimulating us. And so food is a source of entertainment and of not feeling deprived. So how do you then start to limit yourself there a little bit?
Well, I think it's twofold. Jay, maybe you want to jump in terms of what you do with your clients, then I'm going to move into sort of emotional stuff.
Yeah. So I say a lot of times, like, food is the hardest addiction, right? Because you can't stop eating. You can stop drinking, you can stop gambling, you can stop having sex, you can stop, but you can't stop eating. So, and to what Debbie was just saying is that, like, if you take a look at what's happening right now, like Nina, if we were going to use you as an example, tuna casserole, vodka, and ice cream have
gluten-free pretzels.
Oh, sorry, gluten-free pretzels. They're not brand new. They're things that have been there before. They've comforted you in some way or another, right? Like, and I encourage everybody to sort of look at what's happening right now. And instead of being like, oh my gosh, this quarantine has me doing X, it's like, no, this feeling has me doing it. Because then when we pay attention to, it's not actually the quarantine that's why you're baking banana bread. And it's not the quarantine that's having you drink every night. It's the feeling that's coming up. And when we connect those, there's a way to then say, okay, so, you know, a little bit of vodka might actually relax me, and that's fine, but it's not necessarily going to solve or resolve some of the deeper feelings, which is where Debbie connects it. But I also think that, you know, there's this interesting part of deprivation. I talk about some or none, people that like have to have it all, or people that can't have any of it. And so there's a language there. And you talked in the beginning about shame. You know, I believe in the world of nutrition and food, you know, shame comes from judging the food as good or bad. Shame comes from, I can't ever eat this. Shame comes from feeling like you've done something wrong. Mm-hmm. But when we can rewire the thought process, right? So Debbie doesn't dig into ice cream and chips thinking, this is terrible, this is going to kill me, this is wrong, this is bad. She digs into it thinking, I'm doing this because I'm feeling X, Y, and Z. And that allows her to do it and move on from it. Where we get caught is when we don't have the wherewithal to think like, there's an action behind the eating that is deeper than just the food. And we take away the power of the food as good or bad, we can start to resolve some of the shame around it.
Now that's interesting. I have a friend who's been trying to lose weight for years and years and couldn't lose weight. And I always knew that it just didn't make sense, because when I was with her, she always ate really reasonably, but it turns out she eats large amounts of ice cream at night, and that will do it. That will put on weight, right? And so I'm just thinking about her for a sec, like the psychology, you know, is she not understanding the feelings that are coming up late at night when she's going to the ice cream? Because I actually don't feel like I'm really overindulging. I'm trying to also apply it to myself. Like I'm only drinking 1 to 2 drinks a night. You know, I mean, it's bad that I'm drinking every day. I've probably only had like 4 nights the whole quarantine that I haven't had any alcohol, maybe 5.
Which is very different for you. In a long time, you haven't done that.
Yeah, it's pretty much my normal. I mean, sometimes I'm a little better than others, but I'm not having 4 drinks a night or 3.
It was your normal before quarantine?
Well, I've gotten, you know, I've had years where I've had more to drink and years where I've had less to drink. Yeah. And I'd say my normal life now, I probably try and only have a drink 4 nights a week. You know, I try and have days in the week where I don't drink. Mm-hmm. Now I've not been doing that because I do feel kind of like I am entitled. I've got nothing else to do. Here I am at home with 4 teenagers and I'm going to have a drink. I have made 3 tuna casseroles in the quarantine, and no one else in my family will eat them. So I've eaten the entire tuna casserole 3 separate times.
What's the tuna casserole? I've never had tuna casserole in my life.
It's so good. But first of all, it's not gluten-free. It's egg noodles. It's the easiest, like junkiest. So you boil a thing of egg noodles.
Yeah.
You throw in 2 cans of tuna in water. Then you throw in 2 cans of Campbell's cream of mushroom soup. Jamie's looking so revolted.
Yeah, I feel revolted too.
Stir it up, and then you throw in a bunch of shredded cheese. I usually mix mozzarella and cheddar, and then you put it in a big cast iron pot, and then you cover it with cheese, shredded cheese, and then you stick it in the oven for like 20 minutes while everything melts. And honestly, I think it's the most delicious thing, and I can't understand why no one in my household will eat it.
Because it's disgusting. Listen, different strokes. That's amazing.
I don't remember what the food attachment is. I mean, it is something that I think my mother made sometimes, but it's not like it was a big food of my childhood. But there is something about it that is very, it's like cheese and it's noodles. But anyway, so I'm just thinking about what you're saying, because I like to do these and kind of have some sort of takeaway. So it's like, I'm thinking, am I associating those moments when I'm eating and drinking with a feeling? I really do think most of my feeling around it right now is boredom and entitlement. Like, there's not much else going on. This is entertaining. Yeah. But like 2 nights ago, I ate a whole bag of gluten-free pretzels and I felt kind of sick. And I was like, why did I do that? That's just going to make me feel gross.
Right. And I'm going to suggest, and maybe Jamie, you know, like maybe it's not just boredom and entitlement, or maybe those are your primary feelings, but it's not everyone's primary feeling.
Again, tell me what it could be.
Well, it could be a lot of things. I mean, we could do a whole private therapy session, you know, but I want to sort of like even it out in terms of, but let's just go with it. You think it's entitlement and boredom, right? For me, it was definitely loneliness. Mm-hmm. For somebody else, it could be something else. And here's where it's so important to do the emotional work, or, listen, I'm going to say for you, this is probably not a problem. You don't care that you're drinking a lot. You've reined it in, you're exercising. You don't feel like you've gained too much weight. You don't feel bummed out about it. So that's okay. Right. But there are a lot of people, me included, after the first month or 6 weeks, it was like, holy crap, like, what am I doing? And I need to rein it in. I need to sort of deal with myself around what is going on for me. And I'm very good at emotional work. Clients, I say this often. As of recent, one of my clients is like, Debbie, you're the Michael Jordan of emotions. We're not all so in touch with ourselves. And I appreciate that. But I do think that emotional work is as important as, if you're talking about food and weight and diet and your body, it's as important as the work you have to do around what you eat and your exercise, of getting in touch with what is going on for you. And the only way you can do that is to get quiet, whether that's through meditation, to find your emotions. I always talk to cinema therapy, watching something that will bring up your emotions. And the thing that triggers you to feel is the thing that's happening inside of you, because it's easier to cry for someone on the screen than for ourselves half the time.
Well, wait, that's an interesting idea that we've never talked about. I've never even really thought about. I mean, we're all screaming so much right now, but I can't say that anything has made me cry.
And I've cried more than I've ever cried in my life. And I cry almost every day. So, right. It depends on whether you're really getting in touch. And, and a lot of people don't know how to release, but releasing through tears, you feel so much better the next day. So
wait, you cry almost every day?
I cry, I would say, yeah, every day.
I'm pretty sure it's every day.
Yeah.
You cry every day?
Almost out of that sentence.
I release my emotions, I would say practically every day. There are some days where I'm working from morning till night and I just pass out. But I'm going to say I probably release my emotions at least 4 to 5 days a week.
Wow.
Yes.
I mean, I used to cry a lot in years when I was like super sad, but
no, it's not super sad. It's a release of emotion. Sometimes it's all my clients' emotions that I'm releasing.
Right.
But if we're paying attention, we feel 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're always feeling. So we're just not aware of it.
So we should be crying. Should I be crying every day? I'm genuinely,
Yes, because there's something sad that hits us every day, but we don't necessarily register it. We just go through our day. We go from this thing to this thing to this thing to this thing. Even some people in quarantine are going from Zoom call to Zoom call to Zoom call to exercise to, or if they're quiet, they're watching TV or they're on social media, they're not allowing the emotions in. If you're paying attention, we're feeling 24/7. I'm not saying you have to sit and hysterically cry every day.
I mean, like, I'm very sad this week about all the racial stuff that's going on. Like, it's horrible.
So
It's not made me cry. And I have to say, I'm not rushing from Zoom call to Zoom call. I really am spending a fair amount of quiet time. I'm going to really have to think about this crying every day.
And so I woke up this morning crying because I couldn't get the video of George Floyd out of my mind. And I wish I never saw it because you can't unsee it.
No, I can't watch it.
So I'm not saying I'm not more sensitive than the average person. I'm not saying everybody has to cry every day. So what I'm saying is, if you're having issues with this particular thing, you need to find what you're feeling. So understanding what's motivating before you can make any real changes. Jamie is great at giving people what to eat and what to do, right? But if you don't figure out your patterning and if you don't figure out your emotions behind it, it's an act of willpower, not an act of a real shift.
Yeah, but I also think that we use food not to feel what we need to feel. So we're all here in quarantine and it's like, well, I'm just eating banana bread. I'm drinking alcohol. And like, because food is social, it's emotional, it's cultural, it's feelings, it's memories, it's connection. It allows us to think we're feeling by the act of the food, and then not have to do some of the stuff that Debbie's saying. And so one of the important things I tell everybody is, it is not what you do some days, it's what you do every day. If Debbie has ice cream and digs chips out once a week because she needs to release, that's not, I don't even want to use the word problem, but that's not an issue. Right. It's the patterns that we're paying attention to in diet, particularly, and alcohol, every single day. So to your friend who was always trying to lose weight, but every day would have a ton of ice cream at night, she's going to feel deprived if she can't have that ice cream at night, instead of being able to adjust the awareness of it and think like, I can still have ice cream. This isn't a world and a life where I can't eat it, but do I need to do it every night? And what is the ice cream doing for me? And I think we as a world, especially as a country, use food to not have to feel.
Yes. Amazing point. And, like I personally was doing my ice cream thing once a week, once every 2 weeks, and then it became every day. And then I was like, okay, what is going on with me? Right. And you reel it in. And I will say, and Nina, I love you, more than almost anyone in the world. Your vodka is helping you not feel.
It's helping you feel what you want to feel.
No, I'm saying if you want to get into your emotions.
I hear you. It's, yeah. So someone else on Facebook, by the way, just said it's also hard because you can't share your baked goods with friends, which is true. The baking thing, I almost baked a coconut cake the other day just because it seemed like a fun thing to do, a vegan coconut cake. But then I thought, I'm just going to end up eating it. When I make these vegan desserts, it's like the tuna casserole. The kids don't even want them. I have to make like really, junky desserts for them. But I don't eat the junky desserts. I don't really like them.
Right.
The vodka, well, sometimes I have wine, but yeah, I hear you. I mean, again, I'm really not, it's not like I'm getting drunk. I've not been hungover at all, but
you asked me why you didn't wake up crying the way I did about George Floyd. I'm not saying everyone had to wake up crying, but I just think that we all use things, for the first part of this quarantine, I too was not feeling and crying. I was eating.
Well, and you're right about the George Floyd thing. Like, I won't look at those videos. There are things I push away because I just know that they're going to upset me too much.
It accidentally came my way. And I was like, oh my God, this is why I can't eat a bite of meat, because I've seen some videos and now you can't undo what you've seen. And then I don't know how you move forward with things without it interrupting. So, but that's another.
Yeah, I mentioned on the last interview with Debbie, because I think it's so interesting. She won't have leather seats in her car. She doesn't like receiving flowers because they die. So,
okay. Right. All right. So nobody needs to be me, but once a week, once every 2 weeks. I know it's not easy having.
All right, no. Okay. So the takeaway here, the point is, and it's a totally valid one, is kind of how in touch with our feelings are we right now? And are we really taking the time to kind of sit down and be alone and really think about how we're feeling and how that might be contributing to the way we're consuming food and or alcohol, right?
I think it also contributes to the way we consume information about food and alcohol, right? So I have a constant influx of people who will see this diet on Instagram or any social media platform, and then they want to try it, and then they want to do this one and they want to try it, and this one and they want to try it, and this one they want to try it, and it's always coming back to like no diets work. And the bigger issue is, well, what is the constant chase for it, and have we been able to sit down and sort of pay attention to your patterns and because like Debbie talks about all the time, the pattern that you have in life is going to show up everywhere. So whether you're doing diet A, B, C, D, or E, your pattern that is not making you successful is going to show up in every single one of those diets that you do. And if you pay attention to that, then you will finally be successful. And by diet, I don't care if we're talking about weight loss, weight gain, clearing your skin, fixing your stomach. I'm just talking about it as an encompassing word of the way that we eat.
Right.
So
I think it's an example of that, of the emotional. So the pattern that we have in life shows up in the way that we eat.
Yes.
What's an example of that?
Great example would be, I will have people who, let's take the Whole30, for example, because it's very popular and people will try it. And
that was my favorite diet for like 2 years. I loved that diet.
And the Whole30 was written under the idea of, for 30 days, I want you to try something different to see how it changes your relationship to food. How do most people use the Whole30? They're on it, they're off it, they're on it, they're off it, they're on it, they're off it. So instead of being able to pay attention to what did I learn about how I tolerate food, how I feel about food, what food does to my body, it's like, oh, day 31, I'm going out to have a drink with my friends. And then they get back on the Whole30 2 months later. Or intermittent fasting. Everybody wants to do intermittent fasting, right? So they start at 12 p.m. and they end at 8 p.m. and they're good for a little while, but then they're like, but you know what, I'm just going to have a drink at 10 o'clock at night. And then they don't count that into and it's this pattern of being able to adjust the rules so that it feels nurturing to you without paying attention to why do I need to continuously go back to not, and there's a million different examples, but the idea is, if you take some of the bigger concepts that Debbie can so eloquently talk about our patterns, our feelings, and, you know, being in touch and awareness, and we apply them to the patterns of our day to day. Why can't you stick to an exercise routine? Why can't you stick with a diet? It's never going to be about the food or the exercise. It's always going to be about sort of that self-sabotage, may even not even be the right word, but what we continuously repeat that makes it not successful.
Right. Well, everything you just described, like about the Whole30 and intermittent fasting, I do exactly those things. So, but so Debbie, who knows me so well, is there some, like, I don't know, pathological pattern I have that is making me do those things?
I wouldn't call it a pathological pattern. I would call it an unconscious pattern, right? And so like when Jamie uses the word self-sabotage, that's really an unconscious sabotage in one way, shape, or form. And that is what each one of us has to figure out what that's about. I mean, and it's not cookie cutter. None of this is cookie cutter. We all operate so differently. And, you know, like Jamie, I'm going to say most of my closest friends, they take 2 cookies or 2 marshmallow treats or a little bit of ice cream, where I then eat the rest, right? I have no self-control there. And while they all do. And what's that about? It's about something for each one of us. You know, like with, you know, I talked about my thing, you know, with Jamie, she was a very disciplined young child, and she was a gymnast. And I'm only talking about us because I know us the best, but this is everyone. And her source of nurturing and comfort was not food. It was going to the gym and having her solace being over there. And so, you know, not that she doesn't get comfort, she does, but who we all are is a birth lottery. Like, we're born into parents. There are certain things that happen, and certain things come easy to us and less easy to us. Like, I'm a natural optimist, right? But I can't fucking not eat sugar. Excuse my language. Sorry, I didn't mean to curse.
We curse all the time.
I always curse. Where, you know, Jamie's you know, and
right. So different people, right. So obviously different people have different struggles based on where they come from.
And it always will go back to where you came from, and what was your relationship with your parents, and what was your relationship in your family, and where did you get attention from, and where did you get nurturance from, or where did you feel lack of that? And then patterns are formed, habits are formed around food, around exercise, around everything. I mean,
how disciplined we are, how undisciplined we are, what our habits. Like, my boyfriend eats 3 meals a day every single day. That's his habit. It's the way his life is. It makes him feel safe and secure.
Right. And but there is a safety underneath. There is a secure. People who are very rigid, there's a reason. People who are more easygoing, like you're definitely, Nina. I mean, you're the most free-spirited person I've ever met in my life.
Oh, that's so
well, you are. You are.
Like, we don't have meal times in my house, which most people think is totally bizarre. Like,
there you go.
The whole concept of breakfast, lunch, and dinner is like weird. We eat when we're hungry, and we sometimes eat together, and we sometimes don't. We just but we can trace your free-spirited nature around food and everything else back to your childhood, and I'm not going to voice that here, but that go ahead. It's fine. They know me all.
It's not a mystery of, you know, sort of what happened with your parents, and you were off on your own at a very young age, and you were traveling and nobody was keeping, you know, so anyone who's listening, if you want to understand your patterns with food, first line of defense is first knowing what you're feeling and what it represents. Is it safety? Is it deprivation? Is it nurturance? And then you can go back further to understand your patternings in life. And then you'll be able to understand where you have to go in on in order to shift it.
I think it's interesting how it mirrors itself too. Like, if you put somebody in the room with Debbie and I, she could tell you where they would repeat patterns in their life, in everything from their job to their relationships. And I could tell you where they messed up their diet. I could say, Nina, the way you messed up Whole30 and intermittent fasting, or messed up is probably the wrong word, but like,
fine, whatever.
Where you went off the rails. Yeah.
Right. I could pull out the pattern in every single human in how they eat and how they exercise, in the same way that she'll do it, how they are emotionally. And that's what sort of why this lines up so much, because it translates. Like, the way we eat, the way we exercise, the way we take care of our health, the way we go to the doctor or we don't, the way we take our vitamins or we don't, is always patterned to who we are. And so I think that's sort of where this marries so nicely, is that, like, that's the deeper stuff, and how is it showing up in your day-to-day?
Behaviorally. Mm-hmm.
All right, so two things. So one, that is super interesting, the idea about like what Debbie said about me being free-spirited. And if I think about that in the relation to it's true, the way I feed my kids or the way I eat, that is kind of interesting. Although, like,
Just
I'm
kind
really,
of, can it be really interesting?
it is interesting. It is interesting because it's true. Like, or like I look at my boyfriend who's like, he's very structured about it, and that really relates to his personality and his childhood. So I am going to think about that. I mean, and it is true, like with diets, like the whole 30 or whatever, or exercise. I do always have this kind of, I mean, I think a lot of people are like this. It's not it's not special to my personality. I'll start something and then get sick of it and move on. And I'll go through fads with exercise. Like right now I'm rollerblading and I'm paddleboarding, and then I'll, do a 6 month where I only do yoga. But we each have our patterns.
Yes, and what I was going to say, Nina, is, I'll just use you. It's like, yeah, maybe some people do some of the things that you do, but you really have to look at the whole picture. I mean, I think I used to say to you all the time, I'm pretty sure, like the way you travel, the way you buy homes or move, or everything's just so easy and so, effortless and without an issue. And I used to say all the time, like, I could use a little of you, because that is not me at all. I don't like change. I'm not an easy traveler. I don't move quickly.
I just want to let our listeners or viewers know that there are plenty of things I do wrong that Debbie criticizes me for.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, I can go through that list.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, and I'm not even saying it's good or bad. It just is. And so you have to take who you are and then backtrack to, like, why did I become this way, and how did my patterns get formed? And if everyone does this for themselves and they open up, a little bit of awareness goes a long way. And then you can really understand where you have to go in on and make changes. And then there's also specific strategies. And I'd love Jamie to talk to this. I don't want to overstep her part, but, like, for instance, like with me, I cannot control sugar. So we have worked out that no sugar stays in this house. If I want it, I have to get off my butt and go get it. And I will tell you, the first month of quarantine, even though I had to wear a mask and I was risking my life and going to supermarkets, and I had to wipe down and stay, I got off my butt like every single day. I was like, oh my God, I'm losing my mind here. So, but there are strategies that you can utilize based on who you are, what your patterns are, and what you need to do to help you. You have to strategize to help you.
All right. So if it's okay if we go a little over on time, are you guys okay for another 15 minutes or so? Because I have 3 different things. There are a couple questions on Facebook that I'd like to ask you guys. I also want to give you an opportunity to talk about the business that you're doing together, because I don't really know anything about it. You separately have practices that I've been to and know about, but I want to know what you're doing together. And I also want Jamie to be able to talk about some of these strategies. So I'll quickly do the questions on Facebook. One is, any advice on my teen girls wanting to eat cookies and candy every day? Is it okay to put limits, like 2 cookies a day? And actually, I have a good friend, and I have also been talking about this. Like, I've got 20-year-old girls at home, and they are eating a lot. And I don't say anything because they're teenage girls, and I just feel like it's a disaster to say something, but I am curious about this. And then the next question from Facebook is, what about crazy yo-yo erratic eating more than overeating?
Well, okay. To answer both of those from the nutrition side of it, crazy erratic eating is no different than overeating. It's not paying attention to the eating pattern, right? So like that's just manifesting in all different erratic foods versus somebody who's manifesting in the same food but eating too much of it, right? So the simplest answer is it's still going to go back to, why do you need 100 different crazy foods to feel whatever, or to hide what you need to feel, versus being able to say, like, am I hungry? Am I bored? What do I need here? What feels good versus what doesn't feel good? So I think those just manifesting in 2 different ways, but it's really the same thing or similar. In regards to the children and the teenagers, and I mean, I could talk to this for hours, but I do believe as parents, we have a responsibility to teach our children how to eat healthy and how to indulge in foods. Everyone's going to do that a little bit differently. If you see as a parent a child overeating, and Nina, in your case, like you see your kids eating a lot.
And my kids aren't kids anymore, so it's tricky. They're not 12-year-olds where I'm modeling, or I can kind of really say. They're 20, 21, 22. So it's different.
And so to that, I would say, like, you always want to make sure that the conversation is not around judgment, right? Because that's where we get gray, and it's, weight and judgment and image and look. But the conversation can be around health, because I do believe as a parent, if you saw your child, excessively drinking, excessively smoking, or excessively doing drugs, you would intervene and say, like, what's happening here? But then when you see them excessively eating sugar, you all of a sudden, and maybe your kids eating sugar, but
that's what I do. I have to say, I mean, I comment on the health implications, and
that's how you do it as a parent. Like, food at its best is medicine, and at its worst is a drug. And if we can identify that, and we can start to say, like, as a mother, here's the deal. I don't know that it's a good idea to have that much. Like, if you're hungry, and it's not depriving them of food. If you're hungry, maybe it's about, getting eggs. And so to the person about the teenagers with tons of sugar, it's the same way the teenagers are going to see cigarettes on the commercials and pick them up, or their friends are going to have, alcohol. Like, we have to just have conversations around it. It's about communication. It's about awareness. It's about transparency. It's about helping them understand that. And then also, like I said in the beginning, which we didn't really talk today on, is shame and guilt around food comes from the idea that the food is bad. And it's not knowing how to have it and when to have it and how to control it and what feels underneath it. Debbie doesn't feel shame around her ice cream. She understands it. We as parents can help our children understand vegetables, proteins, sugars, why they're good and why we like them and how to have them. Of course, younger is better, because then they grow into that.
Right.
But I think in life, it comes back down to communication and, coming from a place of guidance.
Yeah.
The most important.
I like your line that food at best is medicine and at worst is a drug. That's a handy way of thinking about it. And I think sharing that with kids is actually, it's a good concept.
And one more thing on the parenting, because this I see a lot. We can't point the finger and expect somebody to learn. So if they're in your home, I employ you to try and sort of live the same life, because I see a lot of parents who are like,
I swear, I'm not eating donuts or cupcakes, or I really am not.
Not you, but to anyone out there, like, it is important that we support each other and we try and do all of this together. If you've ever been in the home with someone, you're trying to be on a diet and they're not, and they're sitting there having cookies and you're trying to not have them, it's very hard, and so there is some level of responsibility as a household that we want to come together and support each other.
I think that's great advice. I'm just looking at a few other comments on the
I just want to throw in one comment here, because I have a little bit of a different perspective as the kids are older. It's one thing when you're training, because I work with a lot of people on the other end where mothers are too insistent on being skinny and not eating anything, and it could go the other way. Jamie's model of health is one way, but I think when your kids hit their 20s, I'm not saying you can't make a comment, but at some point they got to just make the decision. I don't want someone telling me don't eat my ice cream. I have to come to it on their own. So
that's kind of what I feel. And I have a friend who's been really struggling with this. She's home with daughters, and she's also not saying anything, but really having to bite her tongue. And I do feel like they're smart. They know what's healthy for them. They're trying to figure out their bodies. It's also hard for girls in their early 20s. They gain weight and they lose weight. Like, this is part of growing up. And,
but I'm also going to say
kids, that to me is an adult. Like, I'm talking about, the 10,
kids.
15.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Jamie. I think your advice is really good.
We're saying older kids, like 20s, like genius kids. But I'm also going to say that these kids learn their patterns from you.
Totally.
So the way Jamie's raising her children with this model of health, that's how they'll grow up. Your kids grow up watching you eat more, eat less, eat more. Like, I've known you a lot of years. You get skinny, you gain some weight. You get skinnier, you gain some weight. So they're probably going to do the same thing.
Right.
My patterns of eating, I watched my parents have that pattern of eating. So it does start from top down, which is what Jamie said. But once it's already done at 22, it's done. Now they got to figure out how to unravel it.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point.
Yeah, and to me, they're adults.
Yes, they're adults.
I want to hold on to them.
I mean, I do have to say, I went to a social distance visit with Jamie and her family, and in her home, I mean, her kids are allowed sweets, but they've learned from their mom, they have a little bit, and they don't want more. And when it was time to take a walk, because exercise in that home, fitness has been happening from the beginning. They take their girls to the gym on the weekend. They didn't feel like taking a walk, and they're like, no, it's on the schedule. It's time to go take a walk. right? So in that home, since they were tiny, tiny humans, they go to the gyms on the weekends, and that's how they're going to grow up, and that's how they're going to be. They're not going to have to try to be that, because it happened at the beginning. So I'm watching her girls at the beginning, and that's what I'm saying. We all learned it at the beginning. Yeah. My father gave us mounds of sugar, and it was a joy, and that's what I find a joy now.
No,
right?
That's a really, really good point. And presumably Jamie's children will have other problems, even if they'll be super.
Presumably, definitely. Show me a human who doesn't have problems.
But these girls, you give them, and they'll like eat a little bit of their dessert, and then they're kind of done.
Wow.
The way Jamie is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's patterns, right? I mean, it's patterns. And
it is.
All right. So by the way, we've had a few women comment that they've actually, Jenny Douglas said she's losing weight because she's quarantined with her vegan daughter and she's not going to restaurants as much. So
good for you. Congratulations. That's awesome. Great.
Yeah. I have seen that for people who go out a lot and now they're not. So there's that side of it too.
Yeah. No, I think the not eating in restaurants is really I'm not missing restaurant food at all. It's actually been fun to just make salads.
Make tuna casserole.
Well, I also make salads and salmon and quinoa. My second favorite quarantine meal, just to redeem myself a little, is totally true, is a grain bowl. I've been making this thing like 2 or 3 times a week, just with quinoa and salmon and just vegetables. Also, for some reason, this is like talking to your childhood. For some reason, I always cooked broccoli by boiling it. I have no idea why. My mother must have just always like lightly boiled it. It wasn't like soggy, but she boiled it. And like, I like broccoli, but whatever. But I've learned to just roast broccoli, which couldn't be easier. You just toss it in a little olive oil and salt, and you stick it in the oven, and it's like a snack. It's so good. I've been eating it like almost every day. So yeah, my grain bowl with like, and some beans. We like make kidney beans or black beans, and then we just put it all together. It's really good. So yeah,
you're redeemed.
Yeah, no, it's really been yummy. And I think I've only had ice cream once through this whole quarantine. So
now you're just showing off.
Now I'm just showing off. So give us some tactics, Jamie, for how to change our behavior.
Well, I mean, the first one is going to be awareness, right? So it's going to be sort of what Debbie says: feel, meditate, cry, move, whatever will change the environment of sort of the need to use food to not feel. But I also, I say to ask yourself if you're bored or you're hungry, because the question alone can sometimes stop you from walking into the kitchen. If you're bored, am I bored or am I hungry? And if the answer is bored, a lot of times you can then move, read something, change the environment, whatever it is. For me, it might be, exercise, who knows, but are you bored? Are you hungry? Really helps stop the behavior and put some action behind it. And if you're hungry, you'll make a decision based on hunger. And if you're not, then there's the other side of it. But the other thing is, Debbie talked to her earlier about trigger foods in your home are not a good idea. Like it's not, there's no reason to have it. Don't try and prove to yourself to be so strong. Like, I'm only going to eat one of the, don't, I'm not condoning throwing away food, but get rid of it, donate it, give it out, give it to a neighbor. Like, don't keep something there that you have issues with. It's
self-punishing kind of.
Right. And if you can't, control your drinking and sobriety, you don't walk into the bar. Like it's sort of the same theme around there, which is know the things that are going to challenge you. Ask yourself if you're hungry or you're bored. And then I can't talk enough about this idea that, food is bad versus food is good. Like, some foods are healthier than others, but, demonizing a certain food then makes us feel worse if we eat it, versus just sort of owning what it is and eating it there. And then I also think, we get into these lifestyle traps. Like, you don't eat for 7 hours because you're on meeting after meeting after meeting. And then all of a sudden you come up for air and your blood sugar is low and you're shaky. And the last thing you're going to do is make yourself a salad because you're going to go and you're going to grab cookies because you're so hungry because you haven't eaten. So there's behaviors that you want to put into place. Like, are you using a ton of caffeine all day long because you've got to get through these meetings? And so then you're not hungry. So then you're not eating. And then what happens at 6 o'clock at night?
It's kind of thinking smartly about your day, planning your day, and being a little bit more proactive about it.
And then one of the bigger ones is, if it's too good to be true, it's not true. So as you're sort of sitting there feeling like, oh, I need to get control of this, and you scroll through Instagram and you see all of these magic pills and these magic answers and these magic diets that are going to make you lose 21 pounds in 21 days or whatever that is, like, you've been down that road before, right? Like, it's such a pull, it's such a message, but it's not, I mean, it's not.
Yeah, I saw an ad for some skinny tea that I posted about, and I saw it on Instagram, and I posted in the app, and yeah, they're stupid. You're right. We've been down this road before.
Well, we have some clients that we should, some people get addicted to the stuff and then they can't get off of it, and it causes all sorts of problems. But that's
So tell us a little about the practice that you guys are doing together.
Yeah.
And how does it work? I mean, obviously right now it's probably not physical, like you're not.
Yeah. So it's called 360 Up Close Everything Wellness. And the reason why it was born is because Dr. Jamie and I mean, we're super tight friends at this point, but we've shared clients for like a decade, and we can't do one without the other, right? It's mind body. You can't talk about diet and nutrition and health without talking about the emotional impact of it. And so we have for years wanting to join forces and sort of addressing both aspects, the emotional and the physiological. So we put it together, and we've come together, and we started doing a lot of seminars. We were going into companies, and that now stopped. So we pivoted into webinars, and we're starting to really pick up a lot of work. And it's really been, a joy to work with Jamie. Obviously, we want to be in person, but it's really been helpful to sort of look at both aspects at the same time so that people can really make the changes that they want to make. Yeah. Because you can't do one without the other. It just doesn't work.
So you each have your own individual practices, and then you refer often to each other, but then you also do speaking and I guess mostly speaking engagements and kind of workshops is the idea going forward.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And how can people find you?
Go ahead, Jane.
So, you can find either of us through our names and our Instagrams, but as a unit, we are 360upclose.com and then 360upclose@gmail.com. So email or website or Instagram, social media. If you get to me, you'll get to Debbie, and vice versa, because we don't go a day without speaking. So, the sort of online presence of all this is building as we build, I think, and we're growing and learning and sort of changing through the climate right now in the territory. But yeah, I mean, it's been interesting to even just do things like this, where we can sort of show how closely all the topics connect. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's definitely been some stuff in this conversation that I'll really think about. It's really interesting. So some of the just takeaways that I'm going to remember for sure are: food at its best is a medicine, at its worst it's a drug. Am I bored or am I hungry? And what were the eating patterns of my childhood like? And
or the patterns, right? They may not be eating patterns. They may be patterns, like Debbie will talk about, emotional patterns that show up in your eating.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, I'll be thinking about all this, and I'm sure everyone else will. And as someone said, lifestyle change rather than diets and pills. Yes, of course. Yeah. Okay, good. Well, we've got lots of comments on here. So there were lots of people watching, which is great. And I really thank you guys both. I'm going to go rollerblading now.
Yay. Thank you, Nina.
Okay. Big kiss. See you later.